Welcome back to this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. We're learning about the Federation of State Beef Councils and how it's involved in the beef checkoff program. And joining me in the studio to help continue this discussion is Craig Uden, Federation Division Chairman, Ann Whitman, Executive Director for the Wyoming Beef Council, Diane Kirkbride, a board member at the Wyoming Beef Council, and Todd Johnson, Vice President of Federation Services at the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. Thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you.
And I wanted to start with you and talking a little bit about the Wyoming Beef Council. Tell us a little bit about the history and how the organization is actually organized in Wyoming.
Sure, Kevin. The Wyoming Beef Council was established in 1971, and we had a checkoff prior to that, but this was a concerted effort by Wyoming cattlemen who had the vision and the knowledge, knowing that they needed to form an organization who could market the end product of beef. Mm-hmm. We have governor-appointed members, and they are representative of the different industry segments within the state, and they can serve for 3-year terms, and they commit a considerable amount of time and are very dedicated to ensuring that the beef checkoff dollars that are collected in Wyoming are spent efficiently and effectively.
And Diane, you are one of those board members, so first of all, congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
And secondly, tell us a little bit about how you set priorities and some of the work that the Wyoming Beef Council does.
We set our priorities on a yearly basis, and the 5 of us get together and we look over a consumer data survey and get some information from our producers and set our priorities. So for 2012, our priorities are working with nutritional professionals. That's our #1 priority. Our second priority is working with our Wyoming consumers. And our third priority is providing producer information for the folks in our state.
That's outstanding. Craig, I've heard you use the words state-national partnership. Define what you mean by that term, and is it really a partnership?
Yes, it is a partnership. It's a grassroots movement of producers out in these qualified beef councils that go out and collect the dollar and then bring that expertise that they know how to, they find out what's going on, what are the issues, and they bring some of those ideas to the national level. Mm-hmm. And Diane serves on the Federation board, and so she's one of those 650 state beef council members that helps decide the way that dollar goes. They bring the ideas, they form a program out of these ideas and the funding that's collected and brought along. And then it goes back to the states and is distributed back to the producers and members throughout the entire country.
And Ann, what are your thoughts about this state-national partnership?
From a state perspective, I have to say that the state-national partnership is critical to our success. We are, because of that partnership, able to accomplish and take on tasks that we wouldn't be able to do alone. In our house, we have 2 staff people, and we cover the entire state of Wyoming, as well as markets outside of our state. And without the knowledge and the coordination with the others, we may be able to do 1 or 2 projects well, but certainly not the entire scope of what we're able to accomplish now.
So, yeah, you're able to really leverage then those dollars and the efforts of folks in your state. And Craig, you've done just that in Nebraska. I know you've done some really interesting things. Give us some specific examples of how this state-national partnership actually works.
Well, there was an influencer group that was identified by the national organization. And they came to our state and said, we bring these folks out and show them what operations are all about. So these folks that are very influential people and really connect with a lot of people wanted to see how cattle were raised. So on one day they came out and they spent an entire day on a cow-calf operation. The following day they spent it at a feed yard. Then they gathered up, got all their questions answered, and had a completely different idea. And it was a very good success story because when they came, very little of them had confidence. When they left, it was close to 100%.
Wow.
So it was a very good success, and now that builds on to more states and more partnerships down the way.
That's a great example. Todd, give us some perspective from a national level. How does the Federation work from your seat in the bleachers?
You bet. I see the Federation serving 2 big priority areas. One is we're a checkoff contractor. So as we talk to producers across the country about the beef checkoff program, we know that the Cattlemen's Beef Board watches over the 50 cents of every dollar that's submitted to the Beef Board. So the Federation is a contractor to the Joint Operating Committee to do checkoff programs. We're also home to the Federation of State Beef Councils, and to what Ann just referenced, the fact that the 45 state beef councils all come together under our umbrella, if you will, so we can share ideas and resources back and forth and really provide services back out to the individual state beef councils in your state so they can continue to do programs, again, funded by the checkoff, that really move the needle on beef demand. A couple things I want to point out. As a contractor to the checkoff, we are under very tight scrutiny for very good reason, not only by producers like Diane and Craig that want to make sure that those dollars are leveraged, but also by the Cattlemen's Beef Board and USDA to make sure those dollars are used very specifically in the checkoff areas of work and not outside of those guidelines.
Craig, it sounds like there's a lot of groups involved. We've got NCBA and Cattlemen's Beef Board and Wyoming or Nebraska Beef Councils, etc. How do all these groups work together?
Well, the beef councils, like Wyoming and where I come from in Nebraska, we make up the Federation of Beef Councils. And we send 10 grassroots producers that work, as we talked about, collecting the dollar, but move on to the national programs. And 10 of us sit on the Beef Operating Committee, and along with 10 folks that are with the Cattlemen's Beef Board. And we review programs that are brought before us. And these are brought before us by contractors such as National Cattlemen's, U.S. Meat Export Federation, the Federation, as well as others. And then there's complete oversight by USDA, so they're involved. And we discuss all these programs, and then we decide which ones we're going to fund, and that is your future programs that are going to be back and dispersed back into the country through the state beef councils.
Very good. Well, speaking of programs, Todd, I wanted to ask you, tell us a little about some of the national programs that you operate.
You bet. As Craig referenced, the operating committee has that final authority over which programs will be funded on an annual basis. But in general, the Beef Checkoff works in three big areas: promotion, research, and information. So at the Federation, the primary areas of promotion include our advertising campaign. Beef It's What's for Dinner, recognized by over 80% of consumers, very successful in laying that bedrock understanding of our product. In the area of research, we work in several areas. You might think about the recent release of the BOLD diet, Beef in an Optimal Lean Diet, which is part of our nutrition research. We also do safety research, product enhancement. So those are the big areas of research. And then we also work in this area of information. If you think back to 2003 and the BSE case that happened here in the United States, the information program funded by the checkoff helped bring information out to consumers and to producers to help settle concerns about an issue like that. So if you think about those three big checkoff areas, we work in all of them. We also have this area of working with our state beef councils. To what Ann referenced earlier, our team at the Federation is able to provide very tactical services to our state beef councils, such as design services, designing brochures and graphics. We also provide communication tools, website development, etc. So those are the big checkoff program areas we're working on, and they distribute, as Craig said, across the country and around the world.
Well, Diane, give us an example of how you tie some of what's going on nationally with you all's priorities at the State Beef Council level.
Well, as I said, one of our priorities in Wyoming this year was working with nutritional professionals. And we were able to utilize the BOLD study and the presentation that was prepared for us to a group of cardiac rehab folks, which was a great opportunity to tell our story about this new diet. So it was wonderful to have that information available. The other thing that we do, another thought was that we utilize some of the information we get from the National Federation to do advertisements, and we can specify them for Wyoming information, and it's ready and available for us to utilize. So we're very fortunate to be able to get that kind of information from the Federation of Beef Councils.
And what would you add in terms of what happens at the national level complements what happens at the state level and vice versa?
Our shop has two folks in it, and so it's difficult to manage an entire scope of projects. with just two of us and the entire state to cover, we could probably do one or two projects well. But with the coordination through the Federation and all of our partners from the other state beef councils and our national staff, we can, in one day, talk about BOLD. We can educate producers about beef quality assurance, and we can still run advertising, and so we can have a really comprehensive, hard-hitting program that we wouldn't be able to do independently.
Craig, as Federation board member, I guess I'd be interested, how do you ensure that these programs that we're talking about actually create value for producers?
Well, we've looked at these programs for a long time. There's a planning process out there, and then as these programs get implemented, we come back with an evaluation and really do a deep dive into how these programs, what effect they had for the dollar, because these are hard-earned dollars by our producers. We want to stretch them as far as we can. As it's limited, we have to touch as many people as we can. But with that assurance of the evaluation committee overlooking those dollars, producers can be assured that their money is very well spent. And if there isn't any kind of issues, those plans of work then get retooled a little bit to be more effective in the future.
Todd, this is a big part of your job. What would you add?
Well, I would add that the industry has given us the roadmap to follow, and that's the long-range plan. We've talked about that on other shows in the past, Kevin. So when producers set the beef industry long-range plan, we as checkoff contracting organizations look to that plan as a way for us to build our programs so we can address that very specifically. That planning process is really ongoing. To Craig's point, we're starting it now for 2013, but we're also evaluating previous year's programs. So we appreciate that roadmap and we follow it very closely.
Well, thank you all. This is a great beginning of a discussion. I think we've clarified a lot of issues, not only for me, but for a number of our viewers. And we'll continue with a day in the life of an Oklahoma cattleman who also donates his time to the Federation up next. We'll be right back.